Someone who loves you is trying to help. They're patient, they're trying so hard, and somehow, every time they do, something inside you shrinks. If you felt that, or if you've been that person trying to help, this video is for you.
We're going to walk through 8 real mistakes, not to blame anyone, but because understanding them changes everything. Whether you're the one being helped or the one doing the helping, what you're about to hear might stop a lot of quiet damage. Autism isn't a problem to solve. It's a different operating system. And when someone who loves you keeps trying to install updates you never asked for, that love starts to feel like pressure. Let's talk about where the best intentions go wrong. Mistake 1. Treating masking as progress. There's a moment that happens in a lot of autistic people's lives. Someone says, "You've gotten so much better at this." And on the outside, maybe they have. They make eye contact now. They say the right things at the right times. They blend in. But inside, they're exhausted. What looks like progress is often masking, learning to perform neurotypical behavior so convincingly that everyone around them relaxes. And that relaxation becomes a trap, because now the mask is expected. Now there's no room to take it off. Masking isn't healing, it's hiding. And the people who love the most are often the ones reinforcing it without ever knowing. Mistake 2. Making eye contact a moral issue. Look at me when I'm talking to you. It sounds so reasonable. It feels like basic respect. But for many autistic people, eye contact isn't neutral, it's overwhelming. It takes real cognitive effort. Sometimes it's even physically uncomfortable. And when someone forces it, or ties it to being taken seriously, or uses it as proof of connection, they're not teaching communication, they're teaching shame. They're saying, the way your nervous system works is rude. The way you naturally listen is wrong. And the person on the receiving end learns one thing, that to be loved, they have to hurt themselves a little. Every single conversation. Mistake 3. Using high functioning as a reason to dismiss. But you seem so normal. You're high functioning. You can handle it. These phrases feel like compliments. They're not. They're a door closing. Because what they really mean is, your struggle doesn't count right now. You present well enough that I don't have to adjust. High functioning doesn't mean low suffering. It often means the person has learned to carry everything invisibly. The meltdowns happen at home, alone. The exhaustion is private. The pain is real. It just doesn't look the way people expect. And when someone uses functioning labels to set the bar higher, they're not helping. They're adding weight to someone already carrying too much. Mistake 4. Turning every behavior into a target. Imagine if every time you moved, someone noted it. Every time you rocked or hummed or avoided a certain texture or needed a specific routine, someone gently, lovingly intervened, redirected you, suggested a better way. They mean well. They always mean well. But what the autistic person experiences is something different. A constant message that the way they exist is a problem to be managed. Stimming isn't dysfunction. Routines aren't rigidity. These are tools, regulation strategies the nervous system developed because it needed them. When someone tries to eliminate them without understanding their function, they're not helping someone thrive. They're dismantling the scaffolding holding them together. Stop here for a second. If you're autistic, you might be nodding right now, and maybe also feeling something heavier, because being seen is complicated when you've spent years being unseen. And if you love someone who's autistic, I want you to hear this clearly. None of these mistakes make you a bad person. They make you someone who learned the wrong things about what helping looks like. Both of these people deserve better information.
Both of them deserve a language for what's actually happening. That's what the second half of this video is for. Keep watching.
Mistake 5. Overloading them with social practice. It comes from love. The more you practice, the easier it gets. So they sign them up for the group. They push them toward the gathering. They encourage them to stay a little longer this time, to try a little harder. And the autistic person does try. They try until they're empty. And then they go home and they crash, not metaphorically, but physically. Social exhaustion for many autistic people isn't the same as introvert tiredness. It's a system-level shutdown. Forcing repeated exposure without recovery isn't building resilience, it's building dread. Eventually, the person doesn't just dread the event, they dread the people who keep sending them there. Mistake 6. Choosing therapies that prioritize compliance over well-being. This one is harder to talk about. Some of the most widely used approaches to autism, approaches that parents are told are gold standard, evidence-based, the right thing to do, are built on a foundation of changing behavior rather than understanding the person. When the goal is sit still, make eye contact, stop flapping, respond correctly, and the method is repetition and correction until compliance is achieved, the child learns something. They learn that their natural responses are wrong, that their body's signals don't matter. Research is now showing direct links between certain compliance-based therapies in higher rates of PTSD, anxiety, and depression in autistic adults. This is worth knowing. Mistake 7. Grieving the diagnosis in front of them. When a parent receives an autism diagnosis for their child, grief is real. It's human. It makes sense that they mourn the expectations they had, the path they imagined. But here's what happens when that grief is visible, when the child sees the tears, hears the heavy conversations, feels the weight of everyone's worry. They learn that they are the problem, that their existence is a loss, that who they are is something to be sad about. The grief belongs to the parent. It needs to be processed, but not in front of the child, and not in ways the child can absorb as a verdict about their own worth. Mistake 8. Never asking what they actually need. Of all the things on this list, this might be the quietest mistake, because it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like caring. It looks like doing research, reading books, talking to specialists, building a plan. All of that can be good, but at some point, did anyone ask? Not, what do you need in a clinical intake sense, but genuinely, curiously, what makes you feel safe? What drains you? What do you actually want help with? And what do you want left alone? Autistic people are the experts on their own experience. The help that actually helps begins with listening to them. Everything on this list comes from the same root misunderstanding, that autism is a deviation from a correct way of being. But neurodiversity research has shifted that frame significantly. Autism is a different neurological profile. It comes with genuine challenges, real ones that deserve real support. But it also comes with real strengths, real ways of experiencing the world that have value. The goal of support shouldn't be to produce a person who appears neurotypical. It should be to help someone build a life that works for them, with accommodations, with understanding, with the space to be who they actually are, without having to perform their own erasure. There are adults who spent their entire childhoods being helped, therapized, corrected, redirected, guided toward normal, and they arrived at adulthood exhausted, disconnected from themselves, not sure who they are without the mask, carrying a low-grade sense that something is fundamentally wrong with them. That damage didn't come from cruelty. It came from love without information. And that's the part that's hardest to sit with. For the parents, for the teachers, for everyone who tried. The harm was real. The intention was real too. Both things are true. And the only direction from here is forward, with better understanding and a little more honesty. So what does helpful actually look like? It starts with asking instead of assuming. It means learning about sensory needs, not to eliminate them, but to accommodate them. It means understanding that a meltdown is not a tantrum and that shutdown is not defiance. It means choosing therapists and approaches that center the autistic person's well-being, not just their behavior. For family members, it means processing your own feelings somewhere safe and not making the autistic person responsible for them. And for autistic people watching, it means you're allowed to name what doesn't work. You're allowed to say, "That's not helping me." Your voice in this matters most. None of this means the people who made these mistakes don't love deeply. Most of them love enormously. What it means is that love without understanding can hurt, quietly, slowly, in ways that take years to untangle. But understanding is learnable. The research is there. The autistic community is speaking loudly and clearly about what helps and what doesn't. The gap between good intentions and good impact is closable. Families and autistic people are finding new ways to talk to each other with more honesty, more flexibility, more genuine curiosity. That shift is happening. It's slow, but it's real, and it's worth moving toward. Take a moment before you scroll away. If you're a parent, a partner, a sibling, a teacher, think about one thing you do that you've always called helping, and ask yourself honestly, have I ever asked if it helps? If you're autistic, think about one relationship where you've been suppressing yourself to keep the peace. Is there one thing you wish that person understood? You don't have to answer out loud, but sitting with those questions, really sitting with them, is where something real can begin. This isn't about guilt. It's about paying closer attention to the people we say we love. 8 mistakes. Treating masking as progress. Making eye contact a moral issue. Dismissing struggle with functioning labels. Turning every behavior into a correction target. Overloading with forced social practice. Prioritizing compliance over well-being. Grieving visibly in front of the person, and never actually asking what they need. None of these are rare. Most of them happen in loving families every single day. And now you know what they look like, which means you can start to see them when they show up. That's not a small thing. Awareness is where change begins. Not awareness as a performance, but the kind that quietly shifts how you show up for someone. If something in this video landed for you, I'd really like to know which part. Drop it in the comments. Whether you're someone who recognized themselves in the mistakes, or someone who recognized what was done to them, your experience matters here, and other people need to hear it. This kind of conversation gets better when more voices are in it. If you want more content about how the mind works, how we hurt each other without meaning to, and how we can actually do better, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. And if you know someone who needs to see this video today, send it. That might be the most helpful thing on this list. The people who love us don't always know how to love us well, and sometimes we don't know how to love ourselves well either. That's not a failure. It's just where most of us are starting from. What matters is that we're willing to look closer at our habits, at our assumptions, at the gap between what we mean and what we actually do. Autism doesn't need to be fixed, but the way we talk about it, approach it, and respond to it, that has room to grow. Thanks for watching this one all the way through. It means you're already paying attention.
That's a start.
What if everything you were told about autism was backwards? Not a limitation, not a disorder to be fixed, but a different operating system, one that runs deeper, processes faster, and sees what most people simply miss. 7 things. You won't forget them. Sign 1. Hyperfocus. Most people skim the surface of things. They move from task to task, distracted, scattered, always half present. But many autistic individuals experience something different, a state of focus so deep, so complete, that the rest of the world simply disappears. Researchers call it hyperfocus, and it's not just concentration, it's immersion. When an autistic person locks onto something that genuinely captivates them, they can spend hours, sometimes days, going deeper than most people ever go in a lifetime. This is why so many breakthroughs in science, music, mathematics, and technology have come from minds that couldn't stop paying attention. The world moves fast. They go deep. Sign 2. Pattern recognition. There is a structure underneath everything, in numbers, in language, in human behavior, in the way markets move and systems fail. Most people sense it vaguely. Autistic individuals often see it with startling clarity. Pattern recognition, the ability to detect order inside apparent chaos, is one of the most consistently documented cognitive strengths across the autism spectrum. It's why autistic thinkers often excel in fields like data analysis, engineering, chess, coding, and music composition. They're not guessing. They're reading a signal that others experience as noise. In a world drowning in information, the ability to find the pattern is not just useful, it's extraordinary. Sign 3. Honesty and authenticity. Most of us perform. We soften things. We say what people want to hear, protect feelings, navigate social politics. It's exhausting and often deeply dishonest. Many autistic people simply don't do that, not because they're unaware, but because they're wired toward truth. They say what they mean what they say. In a world saturated with spin, manipulation, and performative niceness, that directness is rare. And in the right contexts, in medicine, in law, in science, in close friendship, it is profoundly valuable. There's a reason people often say about their autistic friends, "You always know where you stand." That's not a flaw. That's trust. Sign 4. Memory for detail. You mention a fact once. Most people forget it by Thursday. But for many autistic individuals, detail doesn't slip. It sticks. Dates, names, sequences, systems, specific phrases from conversations years ago, retained with a precision that can feel almost photographic. This isn't just impressive at dinner parties. It's a cognitive advantage with real-world consequences. Historians, archivists, diagnosticians, engineers, musicians who can hear a piece once and reconstruct it note by note. This kind of mind holds the record. And when you pair deep memory for detail with the pattern recognition we talked about earlier, you begin to understand why some of the sharpest analytical minds in history have been on the spectrum. Sign 5. Deep empathy and emotional sensitivity. Here's the one that surprises people most. Autism is often described as a lack of empathy. That framing is not just incomplete, it's wrong. Research increasingly shows that many autistic individuals experience empathy so intensely that it becomes overwhelming. They feel other people's pain acutely. They absorb emotional atmospheres in a room. They notice the person sitting quietly in the corner who isn't okay when everyone else has moved on. The disconnect isn't feeling too little,
For many, it's feeling too much without the social scripts to navigate it. That sensitivity, unfiltered, unperformed, is one of the most human things there is.
Sign 6. Creative and divergent thinking. Conventional thinking has a groove. Most people stay in it, not because they're uncreative, but because social pressure rewards conformity. Autistic minds often don't feel that pull. They approach problems from angles others don't consider. They combine unrelated ideas. They ignore the rule that says this is how things are done, and ask instead, but why? And what if? Some of the most genuinely original thinkers in human history, in art, science, architecture, philosophy, showed unmistakable signs of being on the spectrum. Divergent thinking isn't just creativity. It's the ability to see possibility where others see only what already exists. Sign 7. Loyalty and depth of connection. Autistic individuals often form fewer relationships, but the ones they form tend to be extraordinarily deep. When an autistic person calls you a friend, they mean it completely. They show up, they remember. They don't perform closeness and disappear when things get hard. They're not networking, they're connecting. In a culture obsessed with followers, likes, and surface-level socializing, that kind of loyalty is increasingly rare. People on the spectrum often describe feeling alien in casual social settings, but in one-on-one connection, in deep conversation, in relationships built on honesty rather than performance, they are profoundly present. That kind of friendship changes people. Why do these strengths exist? It's not random. Autistic brains process information differently, often with more local processing, more detail-focused attention, less automatic filtering of what's considered irrelevant. The same neurological differences that create challenges in certain social environments also produce remarkable cognitive advantages. This is the core idea behind neurodiversity, the understanding that variation in human brain wiring is not purely error, it is in part adaptation. Different environments need different kinds of minds. The mind that struggles in a crowded open-plan office might be exactly the mind that solves the problem no one else can see. Difference and difficulty are not the same thing. If you've spent years being told you think too much, feel too much, focus on the wrong things, struggle with the right things, this video is for you, not as comfort, as information. The abilities we've described today are real, documented, studied. They aren't compensations or silver linings or things people say to make you feel better. They are genuine cognitive strengths that emerge from a particular kind of mind. And if you've spent your life feeling like you didn't quite fit, maybe the question was never, what's wrong with you? Maybe the question was always, wrong for what exactly? And who decided? So what do you do with this? First, if you're autistic or suspect you might be, consider getting a proper assessment. Not to receive a label, but to receive understanding. Knowing how your mind works lets you build a life that works with it, not against it. Second, if you love or work with someone on the spectrum, lead with curiosity instead of correction. The things that look like problems are often features operating in the wrong environment. Third, for everyone, stop measuring human value by a single standard. Different minds solve different problems. The goal was never sameness. It was always possibility. Being autistic is not only strengths. That would be dishonest, and you deserve honesty. Sensory overwhelm is real. Social exhaustion is real. The gap between how you process the world and how the world is set up, that friction is real, and it costs something.
None of what we've said today erases that. But strengths are also real. Both things are true simultaneously. The goal of this conversation was never to minimize the hard parts. It was to make sure the remarkable parts, the ones that often go unseen, get named. Because you can't build on what you can't see, and these abilities deserve to be seen.
Take a moment. Think about someone in your life on the autism spectrum, or think about yourself if that's closer to home. Which of these 7 abilities do you recognize? The focus that won't let go? The pattern no one else noticed? The honesty that felt blunt but was actually just true? The memory that held on when everyone else forgot? The empathy that ran too deep to explain? The thinking that went sideways in the best possible direction? The friendship that showed up completely? These aren't quirks. They're not coincidences. They are a cognitive signature, and they matter more than most people know.
7 things autistic people do better than most. 1. Hyperfocus, the ability to go deeper than distraction allows. 2. Pattern recognition, reading signal inside noise. 3. Honesty, saying what's true, not what's convenient. 4. Memory for detail, holding what others let fall. 5. Deep empathy, feeling without the filter. 6. Divergent thinking, imagining what doesn't exist yet. 7. Loyalty, connecting completely, not performatively. These aren't 7 random traits. They form a picture of a mind that processes the world differently, and in doing so, contributes things the rest of us genuinely need. The world is better because these minds are in it. If this video made you think differently about something or someone, leave a comment below. Tell me which of the 7 surprised you most. Or share this with someone who needs to hear it, because there are people watching this right now who have spent years wondering what's wrong with them, and the answer might be nothing. If you want to go deeper on how the mind works, how psychology shapes the way we see ourselves and each other, subscribe. We put out new videos every week, and the next one, I think you're going to want to see it.
The human mind is not one shape. It never was. For most of history, difference was treated as defect, something to correct, suppress, or apologize for. But science keeps telling us something else, that variation in how we think, how we feel, how we process, that variation is not a bug in the system. It's part of what makes the system work. Autistic minds have been here forever, in every civilization, in every field, often unrecognized, often misunderstood, but always contributing. That contribution deserves to be named. It deserves to be celebrated. And most of all, it deserves to be seen. Thank you for watching. You notice the hum of the refrigerator 3 rooms away. You see the crooked picture frame before you see the person standing next to it. Everyone else missed it. You didn't. And you never understood why you couldn't just not notice. Stay with me. Because what looks like distraction or oversensitivity is actually something researchers are only beginning to understand. The autistic brain doesn't see more, it processes differently. And that difference, it might be the source of some of the most remarkable creativity on Earth. This video isn't a diagnosis, it's an exploration. we're looking at 8 specific ways the autistic brain perceives detail, and how those same traits quietly fuel art, music, science, and storytelling in ways neurotypical minds simply aren't wired to replicate. Sign 1. Hyperfocus on micro-details. Imagine standing in a forest, and instead of seeing trees, you see the exact pattern of bark on one specific trunk, the way the light catches a single groove, the tiny moss colony living in the shadow of a root. Most people scan the whole picture. The autistic brain zooms in. Researchers call this local processing bias, a tendency to perceive parts before wholes. And while it can make big picture tasks feel overwhelming, it creates something extraordinary. Musicians who hear every layer in a chord, writers who choose words with surgical precision, artists whose work contains details most viewers never consciously notice, but always feel. Sign 2. Sensory memory that sticks like film. Most people remember the gist of a moment. The autistic brain often records the texture of it, the exact color of the wallpaper in a childhood room, the specific pitch of a voice during an argument, the smell of a place visited once 10 years ago. This sensory memory isn't just vivid, it's involuntary. It arrives without invitation. And while that can mean old pain returns with full force, it also means creative recall that bypasses imagination entirely. These aren't reconstructed memories, they're replayed. And that kind of raw, unfiltered material is what great art is made of.
Sign 3. Pattern recognition beyond the obvious. Give an autistic mind a data set, a piece of music, a social situation, and something interesting happens. Patterns emerge that others walk right past, not because the brain is faster, but because it isn't filtering the same way. Neurotypical processing tends to suppress low-level signals to focus on what's socially or contextually relevant. The autistic brain lets more in. The result? Connections between things that seem unrelated, structures hidden inside chaos, mathematicians who see elegant proofs in noise, composers who hear the architecture inside a melody. This isn't a trick, it's a different operating system, and some problems genuinely need it.
Sign 4. Intense narrow interest as creative fuel. There's a word the psychology world uses, special interest, but that term barely covers what it actually is. When an autistic person locks onto a subject, it isn't a hobby, it's immersion, total, consuming, years-long deep dive into every corner of something. The history of clocks, the acoustics of specific concert halls, the evolutionary biology of insects. And here's what that kind of obsession produces: depth that casual interest never reaches. The person who has spent 3,000 hours thinking about one thing doesn't just know it, they feel its edges. They see where it connects to everything else. That's not obsession, that's mastery.
Sign 5. Literal thinking that cuts through noise. When someone says, break a leg, the autistic brain often flags it first as physically dangerous. That's the joke. But underneath the joke is something genuinely powerful. Literal thinking strips language down to what it actually means. It resists metaphor as a substitute for precision. And in a world drowning in vague corporate language, polished half-truths, and comfortable euphemisms, that literalness becomes a kind of radical honesty. Writers who say exactly what they mean, scientists who refuse to round off inconvenient data, designers who ask, but why does it actually need to look this way? Literal thinking doesn't miss the point.
it finds it.
Sign 6. Emotional depth processed differently. There's a persistent myth that autistic people don't feel emotions deeply. The research says something almost opposite. Many autistic individuals experience emotion with intense force. The difficulty is often in the translation, in reading others' expressions in real time, in finding the right words fast enough for a conversation that doesn't wait. But when there's space and time, in writing, in music, in visual art, that emotional depth becomes visible, and it's often startling in its honesty. There's no performance layer, no social smoothing. What gets made comes directly from what was felt. That's rare. In a world of curated feeling, rawness is its own kind of genius.
There are a few more important signs ahead, but if this resonates with you, subscribe to Mind Patterns so you don't miss our upcoming breakdowns on psychology and mental health.
Sign 7. Resistance to conventional frameworks. Every field has assumptions so old nobody questions them anymore. The way a novel is supposed to be structured, the way a scientific paper should read, the way a business meeting must be run. The autistic brain often experiences these frameworks as arbitrary, because to a mind that processes from first principles, they are. Why this way and not another? That question, irritating in a classroom, becomes revolutionary in a creative field. The history of art, music, science, and design is full of people who looked at the established structure and said, genuinely, not dramatically, I don't see why this has to be this way, and then made something new. Sign 8. Hypersensitivity as aesthetic antenna. Sound too loud, light too sharp, fabric too rough against skin. Hypersensitivity is often framed as a problem to be managed, but turn it sideways and look at what it actually is: a nervous system tuned to receive more signal than most. And what does a person do with a lifetime of being acutely aware of texture, sound, light, and sensation? They develop aesthetic intelligence most people spend years trying to cultivate. The filmmaker who knows exactly when a shot has the wrong light. The musician whose ear catches the one note that doesn't belong. The designer for whom wrong always feels wrong before it can be explained. We're halfway through, and I want to pause here, because if any of these signs are landing for you, if you're sitting there thinking, that's me, I've always done that, I want you to know something. None of what we've talked about is a flaw wearing a clever disguise. These aren't broken functions that happen to produce art as a side effect. They are genuine cognitive strengths. Different, yes. Demanding, yes, but real. And the next part of this video is about what to do with that understanding, because knowing is just the beginning. Let's keep going.
It's important to say this clearly. Autism is a spectrum, and no two autistic people experience it the same way. Everything in this video reflects patterns observed across research and lived experience, not a checklist that applies universally. Some autistic individuals face significant daily challenges that don't come with creative silver linings. That's real, and it deserves acknowledgement. At the same time, the neurodiversity framework, which views autism as a different cognitive style rather than a disorder, has strong and growing research support. Understanding how the autistic brain works doesn't erase the hard parts. It adds context, and context, more than almost anything else, changes how we see ourselves. Think about how many autistic people spent years being told they were too much, too sensitive, too focused on the wrong things, too literal, too intense. And then imagine finding out that the very things you were criticized for, the noticing, the depth, the patterns, the honesty, were never flaws. They were just a different way of being human. That realization doesn't undo the hard years, but it reframes them. And reframing is powerful, not as a therapy trick, not as positive thinking, but as accurate information finally arriving. Sometimes understanding yourself correctly is the most healing thing that can happen.
So what do you do with this? First, if you recognize these traits in yourself, consider learning more. Not to diagnose yourself through a YouTube video, but because self-knowledge is genuinely useful. There are well-validated screening tools, therapists who specialize in late-identified autism, and communities of adults who found answers later in life and describe it as life-changing. Second, if you recognize these traits in someone you love, let this shift how you see them. Not as someone struggling to be normal, as someone operating on a different system entirely. Curiosity is a better starting point than correction. It almost always leads somewhere more useful. Here's the nuance I want to leave you with. Being autistic doesn't automatically make you creative, and being neurotypical doesn't mean you lack depth. What this video is really about is the value of cognitive diversity, the idea that minds that work differently aren't just tolerated variations, they are necessary ones. History keeps showing us that the people who change things are often the ones who couldn't see the world the way everyone else did, not because difference is always an advantage, but because sometimes the world needs solved requires a brain that isn't running the standard software.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you something. Think about the moments in your life when you noticed something everyone else missed, when you went deeper into something than anyone around you seemed to want to go, when your sensitivity felt like a liability, but also, quietly, like a gift you didn't know what to do with. Those moments are data. They're not proof of anything clinical, but they might be pointing towards something worth exploring. Whether you're autistic, suspect you might be, or love someone who is, the question underneath all of this is the same. What does it mean to truly understand a mind?
Let's bring it together. 8 ways the autistic brain sees detail differently. 1. Hyperfocus on micro details that others filter out. 2. Sensory memory that records experience like film. 3. Pattern recognition that finds structure in noise. 4. Deep, consuming interest that produces genuine mastery. 5. Literal thinking that cuts through vagueness to truth. 6. Emotional depth that bypasses performance and goes straight to honesty. 7. Resistance to conventional frameworks that drives original thinking. 8. Hypersensitivity as a finely tuned aesthetic antenna. None of these are flaws. None of them are superpowers. They are traits. And traits, understood clearly, become something you can actually work with. If this video hit something real for you, I'd love to know. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 8 signs felt most like home. Not because the algorithm likes comments, though it does, but because these conversations matter. Knowing you're not the only one who notices everything, feels everything, goes deep into everything, that changes something. Subscribe if you want more videos that take psychology seriously and treat you like an adult. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you want to go deeper, the next video is already waiting for you. I'll see you there.
The autistic brain isn't broken. It isn't a tragedy. It isn't a superpower either, because that framing puts impossible pressure on real people living real lives. It is a different way of being present in the world, a different way of receiving it, processing it, and making something from it. And the world genuinely needs different ways, not as inspiration, not as decoration,
as actual contributors to how we think, make, and solve. If today you understood something about yourself or someone you love a little more clearly, that's enough. That's exactly what this was for. Take care of your mind. It's the only one you've got. You probably know someone like this. They don't talk much at parties. They seem distracted when everyone else is laughing. People call them weird or too serious. But here's what nobody tells you. That person might be operating on a completely different cognitive level than everyone around them. We're about to go through 9 psychological patterns that appear consistently in people with exceptionally high intelligence. Not just book smarts, deep structural differences in how their minds actually work. Stay through all 9. The last few will surprise you more than the first. High IQ isn't what movies made it look like. It's rarely confidence or charm or having all the answers. More often, it's a quiet, almost uncomfortable relationship with your own mind, one that brings as many struggles as it does strengths. Let's talk about what it actually looks like. Sign 1: overthinking as a default mode. Most people make a decision and move on. People with very high IQ often can't do that, not because they're indecisive, but because their brain automatically generates more variables, more possible outcomes, more edge cases than the average mind even notices. What looks like hesitation from the outside is actually a parallel processing overload happening in real time. They see the second-order consequences, the exceptions, the risks nobody asked them to calculate. It's not anxiety, though it can feel like it. It's a mind that was built to go deeper. And sometimes, going deeper means you never quite reach the bottom. That's both the gift and the weight. Sign 2: a complicated relationship with boredom. Boredom for a high IQ person isn't just uncomfortable, it can feel physically painful. When the brain is wired for complex stimulation and the environment doesn't deliver it, something almost like restlessness takes over. School was often torture. Routine jobs feel suffocating. Small talk feels like running a sports car in first gear indefinitely. This is why many highly intelligent people have a history of dropping things, hobbies, jobs, relationships, not from laziness or fear of commitment, but because once they've mentally mapped something completely, the drive disappears. The hunger is for novelty, depth, and challenge. Without those 3 things, the engine starts eating itself. Sign 3: intense sensitivity to injustice. There's a pattern researchers call overexcitability that shows up disproportionately in high IQ individuals, and one of its clearest expressions is a visceral, almost physical reaction to unfairness. Not just personal unfairness, but watching injustice happen to strangers, to systems, to ideas. They feel it differently. It's not performative outrage. It's a deep, genuine disturbance that can stay with them for days. This makes them powerful advocates and terrible bystanders. But it also means they carry a lot of weight that was never theirs to carry. The world's problems feel like personal problems. That's a heavy way to move through daily life, and most people around them don't see it. Sign 4: difficulty with authority that feels arbitrary. From childhood, highly intelligent people tend to ask, why? Not to be difficult, but because their mind genuinely needs the logical structure behind a rule to accept it. When authority is backed by reason, they're usually fine. When it's backed only by because I said so, or tradition, or status, something in them resists automatically. This created problems in school. It creates problems in certain workplaces. It's not rebellion for its own sake. It's a brain that runs on internal logic, and external rules that can't justify themselves simply don't compute. The hierarchy has to make sense, or it doesn't hold.
Sign 5. A deep need to understand the why behind everything. This goes beyond intellectual curiosity. For people with very high intelligence, the surface explanation is almost never enough. There's an almost compulsive need to trace things back to their root causes. Why does this social norm exist? Where did this emotion actually come from? What's the mechanism behind this pattern? It applies to everything: history, relationships, their own behavior, other people's behavior, systems, emotions. This is why many of them become researchers, philosophers, therapists, or just relentless autodidacts who can't stop pulling threads. The world for them isn't a collection of facts, it's a collection of puzzles, each one hiding another puzzle underneath. They find that thrilling and exhausting. We're halfway through, and I want to pause for a second, because if several of these have already felt uncomfortably personal, that's worth noticing. Most of what we've covered so far is internal, the noise inside the mind that most people never see. What's coming next shifts outward. How these patterns show up in relationships, in the way people talk, in how they handle failure, in the strange loneliness that often follows exceptional intelligence. The second half is where it gets really interesting. Don't go anywhere, because sign 6 is one that almost nobody expects.
Sign 6, social disconnection that isn't shyness. Highly intelligent people are often described as loners or introverts, but that's not quite accurate. Many of them genuinely want connection. The problem is finding people who match the depth they're looking for. Surface-level conversation feels unsatisfying. Small talk feels like eating cardboard when you're hungry for a real meal. So they pull back, not because they dislike people, but because repeated experiences of being the odd one out, of talking about something they care about, and watching eyes glaze over, eventually teaches them to stop trying so hard. The loneliness that follows isn't chosen. It's the price of being tuned to a frequency very few people share. Sign 7, humor that operates on a different level. There's something very specific about the humor of highly intelligent people. It tends to be layered, a joke that works on the surface but has a second meaning underneath, or one that requires connecting 3 unrelated ideas simultaneously to land. They often appreciate absurdism, irony, and dark humor, not from cynicism, but because these forms require the brain to hold contradictions at the same time, which is exactly how their mind naturally moves. What's interesting is that this humor is often deeply social. It's one of the primary ways they connect. When someone else gets the joke at that level, it feels like recognition, like finally being understood. Sign 8, a complicated relationship with failure. Here's something that surprises people. High IQ doesn't protect you from a fear of failure. In many cases, it amplifies it. When your identity has been built around being the smart one, failure hits differently. There's more at stake because intelligence feels like a core part of who you are, not just something you have. This leads to avoidance sometimes, not trying things they might fail at, staying in safe intellectual territory. It also leads to brutal self-criticism when mistakes happen. They replay it, analyze it, dissect every variable. The same mind that makes them exceptional makes them exceptionally hard on themselves when things go wrong.
Sign 9, an unusual relationship with time and meaning. People with very high intelligence often have an early and persistent awareness of mortality. Not morbid obsession, but a real sense of time is a finite resource that other people seem less bothered by and don't leave easily. They can make conventional ambitions feel hollow, climbing a career ladder that doesn't feel meaningful, building a life that looks right but doesn't feel right.
This isn't depression, though it can slide into it. It's a mind that demands meaning and won't settle for the absence of it. What ties all 9 of these patterns together is something psychologists call cognitive complexity, the ability and the tendency to hold multiple, often contradictory ideas at the same time. That's the engine underneath the overthinking, the sensitivity, the humor, the boredom. It's not just processing speed, it's processing depth and breadth simultaneously. And here's the important thing. This creates genuine advantages and genuine costs, often in the same moment. The same depth that makes someone insightful makes them hard to be around sometimes. The same sensitivity that makes them empathetic makes them exhausting to themselves. High intelligence isn't a simple gift. It's a complex instrument that requires understanding to play well.
If you recognized yourself in several of these signs, here's what I want you to hear. The things that made you feel too much, too weird, too intense growing up, those weren't flaws. They were features of a mind that was built differently. The loneliness was real. The frustration was real. The feeling of being slightly out of step with the world was real. And it probably wasn't because something was wrong with you. It was because you were looking for a level of depth that your immediate environment couldn't always provide. That matters. Understanding that changes the story you tell about yourself, often in a very significant way.
Knowing this changes how you navigate things. If you overthink, you don't need to eliminate it. You need to give it structure and time limits. If you get bored fast, you don't fight the pattern. You design your life around novelty and depth. If you feel disconnected, you stop trying to fit into every room and start finding the specific rooms where depth is the currency. The goal isn't to fix yourself. It's to stop spending energy fighting how your mind works and start building environments and relationships that actually fit it. That shift from resistance to design changes almost everything.
None of this means high IQ is better. Let's be clear about that. Emotional intelligence, social intelligence, practical wisdom, these are just as real and just as valuable, and they don't automatically come with high IQ. Some of the most cognitively gifted people you'll ever meet are deeply unhappy because intelligence without self-awareness doesn't take you very far. And some people with average IQ scores have built extraordinary lives through creativity, resilience, and genuine connection. What matters isn't the number, it's whether you understand your own mind well enough to work with it instead of against it. That applies to everyone, at every level.
Take a moment with this. Which of these 9 signs felt most personal? Not just intellectually interesting, but actually familiar, like something you've lived. The overthinking, the boredom, the social disconnection, the fear of failure under the surface of confidence. These patterns don't exist in isolation. They tend to cluster together, reinforce each other, shape how you move through the world in ways you might not have had words for before. Having words for something changes your relationship to it. You can work with what you can name. So name it. Notice it. That's not a small thing. That's actually where the real work starts.
9 signs. Overthinking as a default processing mode. A complicated, painful relationship with boredom. Intense sensitivity to injustice. Resistance to arbitrary authority. The compulsive need to understand why. Social disconnection that isn't shyness. Layered, complex humor. A complicated relationship with failure. And an early, persistent awareness of mortality and meaning. Each of these on its own means very little. Together, as a pattern, they describe a specific kind of mind, one that processes deeply, feels intensely,
and often struggles most with the gap between how it sees the world and how the world is actually arranged. Understanding that gap is in itself a form of intelligence.
If this video connected with something real for you, drop a comment. Tell me which sign hit closest to home. Not for the algorithm. Genuinely, I read these, and there's something valuable about putting it into words, even just for yourself. If you know someone who fits this picture, someone who's been called too much or too serious or too in their head, share this with them. Sometimes the most useful thing is a framework that finally makes sense of something you felt for years. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of psychology. There's a lot more where this came from. Intelligence isn't a destination. It's a set of tools. And, like any tools, their value depends entirely on how consciously you use them. The goal was never to impress anyone, solve every puzzle, or be the smartest person in the room. The goal was always to understand yourself well enough to build something real. Whatever your IQ, that work is available to you, and it starts with exactly what you did today, paying attention to how your own mind actually works. That's not a small thing. That's actually most of it. Take care of that mind. It's the only one you've got.
What if everything you were told about autism was backwards? What if the traits people spent years trying to fix were actually the source of something rare, something powerful? This video isn't about struggle. It's about what happens when you finally stop fighting yourself. We're going to walk through 10 specific reasons why autistic minds so often outperform, outbuild, and outlast, not despite how they're wired, but because of it. Stay with me until the end. Number 7 might completely change how you see yourself.
For decades, autism was defined by deficits, by what was missing. But a growing body of research and thousands of real lives tells a different story. One about depth, precision, and a kind of focus the neurotypical world quietly envies.
Sign 1. Hyperfocus as a superpower. Most people scroll, they skim, they start things and drift. But autistic individuals, when they find something that truly captures them, go all the way in. Researchers call it hyperfocus, the ability to lock on to a subject with an intensity that feels almost physical. Hours disappear, distractions fall away, the outside world goes quiet, and in that silence, something extraordinary happens. Mastery. Real, deep, uncommon mastery. While others are dabbling, the hyperfocused mind is building architecture, connecting threads no one else noticed, solving problems that stumped entire teams. This isn't obsession in the clinical, frightening sense. This is what genius looks like from the inside.
Sign 2. Pattern recognition beyond the norm. There's a moment some autistic people describe, standing in a room full of information and suddenly seeing the shape underneath it all, the structure, the system, the thing everyone else is missing because they're too busy looking at the surface. Pattern recognition in autistic brains is frequently documented as exceptional. It shows up in mathematics, music, coding, language, finance, visual art. It's not a trick. It's a fundamentally different way of processing the world, one that cuts through noise and finds signal. In a world drowning in data, the mind that sees patterns isn't just valuable, it's irreplaceable.
Sign 3. Radical honesty as a leadership trait. Autistic people are frequently penalized for saying exactly what they think. Too blunt, too direct, doesn't read the room. But here's what no one talks about. In environments where everyone is performing, managing optics, softening truth into nothing. The person who simply tells you what's real becomes the most trusted person in the building. Radical honesty isn't rudeness, it's integrity with no filter. And in high-stakes decisions, in medicine, in engineering, in financial strategy, that unfiltered clarity saves time, prevents disasters, and builds the kind of trust that takes neurotypical communicators years to earn. Honesty, it turns out, is a leadership skill.
Sign 4. Deep commitment to systems and rules. While others improvise and wing it, many autistic individuals build systems, detailed, logical, elegant systems for managing time, organizing information, approaching problems, executing plans. This isn't rigidity, it's architecture. The same neurological tendency that makes spontaneous social chaos uncomfortable also makes building reliable structures almost instinctive. And in professional environments, in entrepreneurship, in any domain where consistency determines outcomes, systems thinkers win. They win quietly, methodically, and completely. The world talks endlessly about passion and creativity, but it runs on people who actually follow through, who build the framework, who make sure the machine works every single time. That's a rare and undervalued gift.
Sign 5. Resistance to social conformity. One of the most painful experiences in autistic life is not fitting in. The exhaustion of masking. The constant recalibration to match what everyone else seems to do effortlessly. But there's a shadow side to effortless conformity. You stop questioning. You follow. You do what's expected because expected is comfortable. Autistic individuals, precisely because social conformity never came naturally, often retain something neurotypical culture quietly erodes: independent thought. The willingness to ask why when everyone else just accepts. To try the unconventional approach. To build something new because the existing model never made sense to them anyway. That instinct? It's where most real innovation begins.
Sign 6. Exceptional memory for detail. Ask an autistic person about their area of deep interest and watch what happens. Dates, names, technical sequences, nuanced distinctions most people would never catch. The detail-oriented memory many autistic people develop around their areas of focus is genuinely remarkable and profoundly practical. In research, in law, in medicine, in history, in any field where precision matters and errors cost, this kind of memory isn't just useful, it's the difference between good and exceptional, between adequate and irreplaceable. The world has plenty of generalists. What it rarely has, and quietly, desperately needs, is someone who actually remembers everything, every time, without trying.
We're halfway through, and before we continue, I want to say something directly to anyone watching this who is autistic, or suspects they might be, or loves someone who is. These aren't feel-good affirmations. These are documented, researched, real cognitive and behavioral patterns that show up consistently in autistic populations worldwide. The reason they get buried isn't because they're not real. It's because they don't look like success in the places where success is usually measured. Stay with me. The second half goes deeper, because the reasons we haven't covered yet, they might be the ones that matter most to you personally.
Sign 7. Intense ethical clarity. Many artistic individuals describe a relationship with fairness and ethics that goes beyond preference. It feels almost neurological. Wrong things feel wrong in a way that's visceral, immediate, impossible to rationalize away. In a culture where ethical compromise is normalized, where everyone bends the rules a little, manages the truth a little, looks the other way a little, this clarity is extraordinary.
It means autistic professionals are less likely to participate in corruption, institutional cover-ups, or the quiet moral erosion that destroys organizations from the inside. Not because they're saints, but because their nervous system registers injustice as genuinely intolerable. That's not a weakness, that's a form of structural integrity.
Sign 8. The capacity for genuine mastery. There is a difference between knowing something and mastering it. Most people know things. They accumulate surface-level competency across many areas and move on. Autistic individuals, particularly in their domains of deep interest, often pursue mastery in a way that looks almost incomprehensible from the outside. They go further, stay longer, ask questions no one thought to ask, revise until the thing is actually right, not just acceptable. This is the profile of the researcher who makes the breakthrough, the programmer who finds the elegant solution, the musician who changes the form. Mastery takes a specific kind of mind, one that cannot settle for almost. That mind is here.
Sign 9. Authentic connection over performance. Neurotypical social interaction is often at its core a performance, a careful management of impression, energy, likability. Exhausting for everyone, but normalized. Autistic individuals frequently describe a preference, sometimes a compulsion, for genuine connection over social theater. Real conversations, real questions, real interest in the other person's inner world. And for those who experience this kind of connection, friends, partners, colleagues, it's unforgettable. Because you know, instinctively, that this person is actually present with you, not performing, not managing, actually there. In a world saturated with surface, depth is rare, and people who offer it without even trying are more valuable than they'll ever be told.
Sign 10. Resilience built from a life of difference. Here is the one that doesn't come from neurology. It comes from experience. Living as an autistic person in a world built for someone else requires daily adaptation, constant problem solving, and a form of resilience that most people never have to develop. Every social situation navigated despite discomfort, every environment adapted to, every system hacked to work for a mind that doesn't match the manual. That accumulated resilience is real. It is not theoretical. It shows up in crisis moments, in professional setbacks, in life's structural failures, as an extraordinary capacity to continue, to find another way, to not break even when everything was designed to break you.
It's worth pausing here to be honest about something. None of this means autism is easy. None of it erases the genuine pain of sensory overwhelm, social exhaustion, executive dysfunction, or the specific grief that comes from spending years not understanding why you're different. This video is not toxic positivity. It's a reframe, a deliberate shift of attention toward what research, biography, and lived experience consistently confirm: that the same nervous system that makes certain things harder also makes certain things possible that are genuinely, measurably uncommon. Both can be true, the difficulty and the gift, the wound and the strength. Holding both is where real self-understanding begins.
If you grew up being told you were too much, or not enough, or simply wrong, this is the moment I want you to actually stop and feel the alternative. What if you were never broken? What if the framework was broken, and you were the one seeing it clearly? What if the exhaustion you felt wasn't weakness,
but the natural consequence of spending every day translating yourself into a language that was never yours. The grief of that realization is real, and so is what comes after it. When people stop performing who they're not and start building from who they actually are.
So what does this actually look like in practice? It starts with a simple but difficult shift. Stop organizing your life around your deficits and start building around your strengths. Find your domain, the thing that pulls your hyperfocus naturally, and invest in it seriously. Design your environment to reduce sensory and social friction so your energy goes toward output, not just survival. Find your people, communities, relationships, workplaces where direct communication and depth are valued, not punished. You don't need to fix yourself. You need context that fits. And the work of finding that context, of building the right conditions, is not a luxury. It is the strategy.
Here's the nuance that matters. Not every autistic person experiences all of these traits. Autism is a spectrum, genuinely vast in how it shows up across different people, different contexts, different lives. Some of what we cover today will resonate completely. Some won't apply. And that's exactly right. The goal was never to create a flattering stereotype to replace the damaging one. The goal is to expand the frame, to make visible what the clinical deficit model consistently obscures. You are allowed to take what fits, leave what doesn't, and continue building your own understanding of a mind that was always more than anyone told you.
Before you move on, take just a moment. Which of these 10 resonated most deeply? Was it the hyperfocus? That tunnel of intensity you felt but maybe never named as a strength? The pattern recognition that makes you see things others miss? The ethical clarity that sometimes feels like a burden but never really lets you look away? The resilience, the quiet, unannounced resilience of someone who has always had to find another way. Whatever landed for you, notice it, name it, because the things that feel most ordinary to you are often the things that look most extraordinary to everyone else.
Let's bring it back. 10 reasons autistic people often achieve more when they stop breaking themselves. Hyperfocus, pattern recognition, radical honesty, systems thinking, resistance to conformity, exceptional detail memory, ethical clarity, capacity for mastery, authentic connection, and earned resilience. These aren't consolation prizes. They're the architecture of some of the most important minds in human history, and in the room with you right now. If this video gave you something real, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment telling me which sign hit hardest, and subscribe, because this channel exists to show you what psychology actually looks like when it's honest.
The world spent a long time telling a certain kind of mind that it needed to be fixed, quieted, medicated into compliance, shaped into something more convenient. And some of those minds believed it for years, sometimes decades. This video is for the ones who are done believing it. You were not built wrong. You were built different. And different with the right conditions, with the right understanding, with even one person in your corner who actually sees you, becomes extraordinary. That's not inspiration. That's just what happens when a person stops fighting themselves and starts becoming who they actually are.
You've been called arrogant, cold, stuck up, maybe even cruel, just for being honest.
But what if that wasn't arrogance at all? What if your brain was simply built differently and the world kept reading it wrong? Today, we're breaking down 8 signs that get mistaken for ego, but are actually something else entirely.
Stay with me, because by the end of this, something might click. Maybe about yourself, maybe about someone you love, a partner, a coworker, a kid who never quite fit. This isn't about labels. It's about finally understanding the wiring behind the behavior everyone judged too fast.
Autistic thinking doesn't always look like the stereotypes. Sometimes it looks like a person who corrects you mid-sentence, or skips the small talk entirely, or seems completely unbothered by things that should upset them. To most people, that reads as superiority, but underneath, it's often the opposite. It's a brain wired for truth, not performance.
Sign 1. They tell the truth even when it's inconvenient. You ask, "Does this look good on me?" And instead of the polite lie everyone expects, you get an honest answer. To most people, that feels jarring, even rude. So they label it arrogance, like this person thinks they're too good for social niceties. But that's not what's happening. For many autistic minds, lying, even a small kind one, feels deeply uncomfortable, almost like a betrayal of reality itself. They're not trying to wound you. They genuinely don't see the point in saying something that isn't true, even if society expects it.
Sign 2. No interest in small talk and zero patience for it. Someone asks, "How are you?" purely as a social ritual, and they actually answer the question, honestly, in detail. People around them exchange glances. Who does this guy think he is? Too important for chit-chat. But here's the truth. Small talk often feels exhausting and pointless to an autistic brain. It's noise without information. They're not snubbing you because they feel superior. They're just wired to crave real conversation, substance, ideas, connection that means something. And the empty scripts of "nice weather, huh?" simply don't compute is worth the energy.
Sign 3. Taking things literally, even when everyone else is clearly joking or exaggerating. Someone says, "I could eat a horse," and they respond with genuine confusion or a factual correction. The room laughs at them, not with them, and someone mutters, "Relax, it's just an expression. Don't be so smart." But that's the irony. They're not trying to show off intelligence. Language, for many autistic people, is processed at face value first. Sarcasm, idioms, hyperbole, these aren't automatic. It takes extra mental work to translate figurative into real. And sometimes that gap looks like arrogance, when it's actually just a different operating system.
Sign 4. Avoiding eye contact, especially during emotional conversations. To a lot of people, that reads as dismissive, like you don't even care enough to look at me. Maybe even arrogant, like they're above the conversation, too important to engage. But for many autistic individuals, eye contact isn't a sign of disinterest, it's sensory overload. Holding someone's gaze can feel like trying to listen and stare into a bright light at the same time. Looking away isn't a power move. It's often the only way they can actually focus on what you're saying.
Sign 5. Correcting people, even in front of others, even when it's a small detail. Someone says a movie came out in 2014. It was actually 2013. And there it is, the correction, mid-conversation, no hesitation. To the room, it can feel like a power play, like they're showing off or making someone look stupid on purpose. But that's rarely the intention. For many autistic minds, inaccurate information feels almost physically uncomfortable, like a wrong note in a song that everyone else seems fine to ignore.
The urge to fix it isn't about ego, it's about restoring something that feels broken. Sign 6. Treating everyone the same, regardless of title, status, or seniority. They'll question a boss's decision the same way they'd question a friend's, calmly, logically, without the usual deference. To a hierarchy-driven workplace, that can look like arrogance. Who do they think they are talking to the manager like that? But underneath, there's often no awareness that social rank should change how you speak to someone. Respect to them is about ideas and honesty, not titles. They're not trying to challenge authority for sport. They genuinely don't register the invisible rules everyone else seems to absorb automatically. Sign 7. Getting so absorbed in a topic or task that they seem to completely tune the world out. Someone's talking and they don't respond, not because they're ignoring you, but because their attention is somewhere else entirely, somewhere deep. To outsiders, it looks like, I'm too busy for you, you're not important enough. But this isn't dismissal. It's a kind of focus most people never experience, a tunnel so deep that everything outside it genuinely disappears. When they resurface and seem confused about what you said, it's not an act. They truly weren't there for a moment.
Sign 8. Reacting wrong to emotional moments. Someone shares devastating news, and the response feels too calm, too neutral, or sometimes, oddly, they smile out of nervousness. To others, this can look like cold indifference, arrogance. They don't even care. But emotions aren't absent. They're often just processed differently, sometimes with a delay, sometimes expressed in ways that don't match the expected script. The smile might be discomfort, not coldness. The calm might be an internal storm with no visible exit. What looks like a lack of feeling is often just feeling that doesn't know how to perform itself correctly.
Here's the pattern running through all 8 signs. Every single one gets misread through a social lens that assumes everyone shares the same instinct. Honesty, focus, literal language, discomfort with hierarchy, none of these come from a place of superiority. They come from a brain that processes the world through logic, precision, and sensory reality first, and social performance second, if at all. The tragedy is that the very traits that make someone deeply trustworthy, honest, and focused are the ones that get them labeled as difficult, cold, or full of themselves. The mask society demands is exhausting and often invisible to everyone but the person wearing it. Imagine spending years being told you're too much, too blunt, too weird, when really you were just being yourself, honestly, consistently, without the social filters everyone else takes for granted. Imagine the loneliness of being misread again and again, of watching people's faces change when you speak, without ever understanding why. Many autistic adults carry this exact wound, a lifetime of feeling like they did something wrong, when really, the world simply never learned to read them correctly. And for those who love someone like this, imagine the guilt of realizing you called it arrogance when it was actually just honesty, wrapped in a different language.
So, what do you actually do with this? First, pause before judging bluntness, literalness, or weird reactions as arrogance. Ask yourself, could this be a different wiring, not a bad attitude? Second, if this resonates with your own experience, know that there's nothing wrong with you. Understanding how your brain works isn't a diagnosis to fear, it's a key to finally making sense of your own life. And third, communicate directly. If something feels confusing, ask. Hey, when you said that, did you mean it as a joke or literally? Small clarifications can dissolve years of misunderstanding on both sides.
Here's the hopeful part. None of these traits are flaws to fix. Honesty, focus, precision, authenticity, these are strengths, often deeply valuable ones, in the right environment, with the right people around. The goal isn't to force someone to perform normal social behavior until they're exhausted. It's mutual understanding, learning to read each other a little better. Some of the most loyal, honest, brilliant people you'll ever meet might be the ones everyone once called arrogant. And once the right people learn how to actually see them, that label disappears completely, replaced by something far more accurate: respect.
Take a moment right now and think back. Is there someone in your life you might have misjudged? A coworker, a friend, a sibling, maybe even a partner who fit a few of these signs? Or was it you? Did you read these and feel a quiet recognition, like someone describing your inner world from the outside for the first time? There's no shame in either answer. Awareness is the first step toward patience with others, and maybe toward a little more patience with yourself. Sometimes the people who seemed the coldest were just the ones speaking a language no one bothered to learn.
Let's bring it all together. 8 signs often mistaken for arrogance: brutal honesty, no patience for small talk, taking things literally, avoiding eye contact, correcting facts publicly, ignoring social hierarchy, intense tunnel focus, and emotional reactions that don't match the expected script. Every single one of these can be, and often is, completely misread. Not because the person is cold or full of themselves, but because their mind runs on a different operating system, one built on truth, logic, and depth, instead of social performance. Once you see that, you can't really unsee it in others, or maybe in yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Did any of these 8 signs hit close to home, for you or for someone you know? Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 8, and tell us which one made you go, wait, that's literally me. Or, that's literally my husband, my coworker, my best friend. This community is full of people figuring this stuff out together, often for the first time, often later in life than they expected. So don't be shy. Your comment might be the exact thing someone else needed to read today. If this video helped you see someone, maybe even yourself, a little more clearly, hit subscribe. We're unpacking the psychology behind everyday behavior every week with honesty, no judgment, and a lot more understanding than the world usually offers. See you in the next one. You've spent your whole life being told you're smart. Teachers said it, parents said it, and you believed it, mostly. But somewhere underneath all that intelligence, there's been this quiet chaos you could never quite explain, and you've been carrying it alone for years. What if that chaos isn't a character flaw? What if the very intelligence that helped you succeed has been hiding something your whole life? Stay with me, because by the end of this, something might finally click into place. ADHD doesn't always look like a kid bouncing off walls. In intelligent people, it wears a disguise. It looks like perfectionism, overachievement, and exhaustion. It looks like someone who has it all together, while quietly falling apart inside.
That's what we're talking about today.
Here's the first sign, and it's the one that catches most people off guard. Intelligent people with ADHD become extraordinary actors without ever trying to. They watch how other people function, absorb the rules, and then perform normalcy so convincingly that nobody, not teachers, not family, not even therapists, suspects a thing. They make lists because they've learned lists help. They set 3 alarms because they know 1 won't be enough. They build entire systems just to approximate what comes naturally to everyone else. And the tragic part? All that energy spent masking leaves almost nothing left for actually living. The performance is exhausting, and it never, ever stops.
The second sign is something that looks like a superpower from the outside. Intelligent people with ADHD are often incredible problem solvers, not because things come easily, but because they've had to compensate their entire lives. When you can't hold a process in your head reliably, you get creative. When you lose track of time constantly, you develop tricks. When instructions slip away before you finish reading them, you learn to improvise brilliantly. The brain adapts. It builds workarounds. But here's what nobody tells you. Those workarounds are exhausting to maintain, and at some point, the gap between your potential and your output starts to feel unbearable.
The third sign almost never makes it into the clinical descriptions. Intelligent people with ADHD don't just think intensely, they feel intensely. A careless comment can land like a punch. A small failure can spiral into hours of inner collapse. The emotional volume is turned up in a way that's hard to explain to people who don't experience it. And because intelligent people are also good at analyzing their feelings, and end up trapped, experiencing the emotion fully while simultaneously watching themselves experience it, unable to stop either. They've probably been told they're too sensitive, too much, too reactive, but sensitivity isn't the problem. It's a symptom.
Sign 4 is the one that confuses everyone, including the person living it. People assume ADHD means you can't focus, but intelligent people with ADHD can focus with terrifying intensity, just not on demand, and not always on what matters right now. They disappear into a topic for 6 hours and forget to eat. They build entire worlds in their heads during a meeting about quarterly reports. And then, when they genuinely need to concentrate on something important, nothing. The switch won't flip. The brain refuses. And explaining this to someone who watched you spend 8 hours obsessing over a single hobby feels completely impossible.
The fifth sign is one that leaves a particular kind of scar. Intelligent people with ADHD consistently perform below what they know they're capable of. Not always, not in every area, but enough to create this nagging, persistent feeling that something is wrong with them specifically. Not their circumstances, not their tools, not their support. Them. They've watched less naturally gifted people outperform them through consistency alone. They've started brilliant projects and abandoned them. They've missed deadlines they care deeply about. And the internal explanation is always the same: laziness, weakness, not trying hard enough. That story is wrong, but it's been running for a long time.
Sign 6 is perhaps the most misunderstood. People with ADHD experience time differently, and in intelligent people, this gets written off as rudeness, disrespect, or simply not caring. But time blindness is neurological. There is now, and there is not now. The future doesn't feel real until it's almost present. Deadlines exist abstractly until they're suddenly terrifying. This is why intelligent people with ADHD can be brilliant planners in theory and completely unable to execute in practice. They know exactly what needs to happen. The sequence is clear in their mind, but translating that knowledge into action across real time. That's where everything quietly collapses, every single day.
The seventh sign is invisible almost by definition. Intelligent people with ADHD are tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It's not physical exhaustion, though that's real too. It's the exhaustion of constantly managing a brain that doesn't run on the standard operating system. Every day requires more deliberate effort than other people spend on equivalent tasks. Every social interaction involves a layer of translation. Every routine requires conscious construction. And because they're intelligent, they usually manage to look fine, capable, even impressive, which means nobody offers help because nobody knows help is needed. The competence is real, and so is the cost of maintaining it.
If any of these 7 signs have felt uncomfortably familiar, stay with me, because what comes next matters more than the list. Understanding why intelligent people's ADHD stays hidden isn't just interesting psychology, it has real consequences. Careers built on the wrong foundations, relationships strained by misunderstood behavior, years of self-blame for things that were never character flaws to begin with. We're going to go deeper now into the psychological and neurological reasons this happens, what it costs, and most importantly, what you can actually do with this information. You've waited long enough for someone to take this seriously. Let's keep going.
Here's what the research tells us, and it's important. ADHD in intelligent people often goes undetected precisely because intelligence compensates so effectively in the early years. School rewards the ability to absorb and perform, and a high IQ brain with ADHD can often meet that bar through raw cognitive horsepower alone. But compensation has a ceiling, and life, real adult life with careers, finances, relationships, and long-term planning, eventually exceeds what brute intelligence can patch over. That's often when people first seek answers, in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. Not because the ADHD got worse, because the scaffolding that hid it finally ran out of reach.
There's a grief that comes with late recognition. When someone understands for the first time in their 40s that ADHD explains 30 years of confusion, that's not just relief, it's loss. Loss of the version of themselves they might have been with the right support. Loss of the years spent blaming themselves for things that were never their fault. Loss of relationships strained by misunderstandings that had a name all along. That grief is legitimate. It deserves space. The recognition doesn't erase the past, but it does something important. It changes the story. Not, I was broken, but I was running different software in a world built for someone else.
So, what do you actually do with this? First, get a proper evaluation. Not a quiz, not a thread on the internet, not this video. A clinical assessment by someone who understands how ADHD presents in intelligent adults. Second, start separating the symptoms from your identity. The procrastination is not laziness. The emotional flooding is not weakness. The missed deadlines are not evidence that you don't care. These are neurological patterns, and neurological patterns can be worked with. Third, find community. People who understand this from the inside. Because isolation makes every ADHD symptom heavier, and connection, genuine mutual understanding, makes the whole system run better. Here's the nuance that matters. ADHD is not a superpower. It's not a gift in disguise. It's a real neurological difference that creates real difficulty, and reframing it as secretly wonderful doesn't help anyone struggling with it right now. But here's what is genuinely true. The same brain that makes consistency hard often makes creativity, pattern recognition, and original thinking extraordinary. The same emotional intensity that's overwhelming in pain is equally intense in love, curiosity, and passion. This isn't about making ADHD sound good. It's about understanding the full picture so you can build a life that works with your brain instead of spending your whole life fighting it.
Before we move on, take a moment with this. Think about the explanations you've given yourself over the years for the patterns we've talked about today. Lazy, unfocused, too emotional, not disciplined enough, not trying hard enough, brilliant, but somehow never quite reaching it. How long have you been carrying those explanations? How much energy have they cost you? Because the question isn't whether you're smart enough, strong enough, or motivated enough. The question is whether the tools you've been given actually fit the brain you have. And if they don't, that's not a personal failure. That's a systems problem. And systems problems have solutions.
Let's bring it all home. 7 signs that intelligent people's ADHD stays hidden for years. 1. Masterful masking that looks like competence. 2. Intelligence weaponized as compensation. 3. Emotional intensity dismissed as sensitivity. 4. Hyperfocus that works against them as often as for them. 5. The chronic gap between potential and output. 6. Time blindness that reads as bad character. 7. Invisible exhaustion that never fully lifts. None of these are character flaws. All of them are recognizable patterns. And recognizing a pattern, really seeing it clearly for the first time, is always, always the beginning of being able to change it. If this video described your experience, even partially, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Not because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because the person scrolling through those comments at 2 in the morning, wondering if they're alone, they need to see your words. Tell me which sign hit hardest. Tell me when you first started suspecting something was different. Tell me what you wish someone had told you earlier. And if this helped you, share it with someone who's been quietly struggling, because the right information reaching the right person at the right moment can genuinely change the direction of a life. You made it to the end, and that matters. Not because finishing videos is impressive, but because you were looking for something real today. Maybe answers, maybe recognition, maybe just to feel less alone in something you've carried quietly for a long time. I hope you found some of that here. This channel exists for exactly this, to take the psychology of how we think, feel, and function seriously. If you want more of this, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. And in the meantime, be a little gentler with yourself today than you were yesterday. You've been working harder than anyone around you knows.
You've probably seen it. Someone so locked into what they're doing, the world around them just disappears. Hours vanish, meals go uneaten, and somehow they produce something extraordinary. What if that's not a problem? What if that's a gift?
In this video, we're going to look at 8 signs of autistic hyperfocus and why what the world often calls a flaw might actually be one of the most powerful cognitive abilities a human being can possess. Stay with me.
Hyperfocus isn't just paying attention really hard. It's a neurological state, intense, consuming, and deeply tied to how autistic brains are wired. Before we judge it, let's understand it, because understanding changes everything. Sign number 1. Time just stops existing. You sit down to work on something that genuinely interests you, and the next time you look up, 3 hours have passed, maybe 5. You forgot to eat, you forgot someone was waiting. Not because you don't care, but because your brain entered a state where the normal rhythm of time simply stopped registering. Clocks become irrelevant. Hunger fades. External sounds blur into white noise. Most people experience this as a problem, but what's actually happening is your brain has allocated nearly all of its processing power to a single task. That's not distraction. That's extraordinary focus.
Sign 2. When something captures your attention, really captures it, it doesn't feel like mild interest. It feels like electricity, like the subject reached into your chest and grabbed something. You don't just like trains, or history, or coding, or music theory. You feel it. You collect every detail. You could talk about it for hours without ever getting tired. People around you sometimes don't understand that intensity. They call it obsession, like it's something to fix. But this emotional charge is precisely what makes hyperfocus so productive. Passion and precision, arriving at the same moment. That's not a flaw. That's fuel.
Sign 3. The outside world simply doesn't get through. Someone calls your name, you don't hear it. A phone buzzers, you don't notice. There's a conversation happening 3 feet away. Total silence in your mind. From the outside, this looks like rudeness, like you're ignoring people on purpose. But inside, there is no ignoring. The information genuinely did not arrive. Your brain installed a filter so tight that only the thing in front of you exists. Engineers do this. Artists do this. Scientists do this. And they produce some of the most precise, detailed work in human history precisely because of it.
Sign 4. You know things about your specific interests at a depth most people find genuinely startling. Not surface knowledge, not Wikipedia-level familiarity. You know the history behind the history, the exceptions to the exceptions, the tiny details most experts gloss over. Because hyperfocus doesn't just direct your attention, it drives you to go deeper and then deeper still in a way that feels natural and even necessary. The world tends to reward broad, general knowledge, but it quietly depends on people who go unreasonably deep. The specialist, the researcher, the obsessive craftsperson. These are the people who actually move things forward.
We're halfway through, and I want to pause for 1 second, because if any of this is landing for you, if you've been sitting here nodding quietly, that recognition matters. We're not describing dysfunction. We're describing a brain that works differently and powerfully. The next 4 signs go even deeper. We're going to talk about what happens in relationships, in creativity, in the moments when hyperfocus shows up uninvited, and why even that version carries something valuable. Don't go anywhere, because the second half of this list is where things get really interesting.
Sign 5. Stopping is hard. Not, I don't want to stop. Physically, neurologically hard. When you're deep inside a task, transitioning out of it can feel like being physically pulled from somewhere safe. Irritability spikes, focus shatters. The shift back to ordinary life feels jarring, almost violent, in contrast to the smooth, absorbing world you were just inside. From the outside, this looks like inflexibility, but what it actually is a brain fighting to protect a rare and valuable state. The resistance isn't immaturity, it's the nervous system defending something it recognizes as genuinely nourishing.
Sign 6. Some of the most creative breakthroughs in your life have happened not through careful planning, but through falling into a subject so completely that new connections just appeared. Ideas linking across fields, patterns nobody else noticed,
Solutions that seem obvious only after you've spent 12 hours in a single thread of thought. This isn't random. Hyperfocus creates the conditions for genuine insight. When your attention is this concentrated, your brain starts making lateral connections beneath conscious awareness, the kind of thinking that produces art, invention, and discovery. The hyperfocused mind isn't just working harder than everyone else, it's working in an entirely different dimension. Sign 7. Food, water, sleep, rest. These things vanish during hyperfocus, not dramatically, just quietly. You're not ignoring your body. Your body simply stopped sending signals loud enough to compete. Hours in, you realize you're hungry, exhausted, dehydrated, and you genuinely didn't notice until this moment. This is one of the more challenging aspects of hyperfocus because it's invisible until the cost becomes obvious. The creative work felt effortless. The body paid a quiet price. Understanding this pattern isn't a reason to fear hyperfocus. It's a reason to build gentle structures around it, to protect the gift without burning the person. Sign 8, and this is the one that matters most. When a hyper-focused person produces work, really produces it, the result is often remarkable. The level of detail, the internal coherence, the craft. Work produced inside a genuine hyper-focused state carries a quality that's almost impossible to replicate through willpower or discipline alone. Because it wasn't forced. It arrived from a place of complete absorption. History is full of people who worked this way. Composers who wrote entire movements in single sittings. Programmers who built systems no team could replicate. Artists who entered a state and came out with something that changed everything. This is that. This is hyperfocus. Here's what's important to understand. Hyperfocus isn't something autistic people choose to turn on. It's not a productivity technique. It's how the brain naturally organizes attention in response to genuine interest and meaning. The neurological difference that makes social situations harder, the same difference also makes this possible. These things are connected. You can't have one without the other. And that matters because the world has spent a long time telling people with these traits to mask, adapt, suppress, perform neurotypicality. But that framing misses something essential. The capacity for this depth of attention is rare, and rare things, understood correctly, are valuable. If you've watched this far, maybe some of these signs felt familiar, maybe painfully familiar. Maybe you spent years believing the intensity of your focus was a problem, that your brain was broken in some subtle way nobody could fully explain. I want to say this clearly. The way your attention works is not broken. It is different, and different, when understood, becomes something you can work with, build with, live with more gently. The exhaustion you felt from masking it, hiding it, apologizing for it, that exhaustion was never necessary. You were fighting something that was trying to help you.
So what do you do with this? First, recognize it. Learn to feel when you're entering hyperfocus and when you're being pulled out. Second, build structures around it, not against it. Gentle timers, water nearby, a simple note that says eat something, not to break the flow, but to protect the person inside it. Third, communicate it to the people around you, not as an excuse, but as information. This is how I work. This is what it looks like. It's not rejection. And fourth, let yourself pursue the things that trigger it, because where hyperfocus lives, your deepest gifts live too.
None of this is simple, Hyperfocus can be genuinely difficult to live with, for you and for people who love you. The missed meals, the lost hours, the hard transitions, those are real, but they exist alongside something equally real, the capacity to go somewhere most people never reach: depth, mastery, flow states that produce extraordinary things. The goal isn't to choose between the gift and the cost. It's to understand both, clearly, honestly, without shame, because that understanding is where agency begins, and agency, the sense that you can shape your own experience, is where everything starts to get better.
Before we close, I want to ask you something. Think about the last time you were completely absorbed in something, not forcing yourself to concentrate, not pushing through boredom, but genuinely, naturally, completely inside something. How did it feel? What were you doing? And here's the real question. Do you give yourself permission to go there? Or have you learned to pull yourself back before you go too deep because someone once told you that level of intensity wasn't appropriate? That question is worth sitting with, because the answer tells you something important about where your energy naturally wants to go.
Let's bring it together. 8 signs of autistic hyperfocus. Time disappears during deep work, emotional intensity around specific interests, complete filtering of the outside world, mastery-level knowledge in narrow areas, difficulty transitioning away from flow, hyperfocus as a creative problem-solving state, neglecting basic needs without noticing, and producing work of unusual, sometimes remarkable quality. Each of these can look like a problem from the outside. Each of them, understood from the inside, reveals something else entirely. A cognitive style that, when supported rather than suppressed, produces some of the most extraordinary work human beings are capable of. That's not dysfunction. That's difference. And difference deserves respect.
If this video reached something in you, I'd really love to know. Drop a comment below. Tell me which sign felt most familiar. Tell me about a time your hyperfocus produced something you're proud of. Or just tell me, for the first time maybe, that you recognize yourself in this. Because this channel exists for exactly that moment. If you found value here, share it with someone who might need it. Subscribe if you want more honest, research-grounded conversations about how different minds work. And remember, understanding yourself is never wasted time. It's actually the most important work you'll ever do.
Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself today. And if hyperfocus pulls you somewhere wonderful tonight, let it. Just leave a glass of water nearby. See you in the next one.